This is modern-day Charlie Rose. He's sitting in the dark, still pretending he has a TV show. And before 34 women accused him of sexual harassment, he was considered a golden boy of serious American journalism. But looking back, that label was always just a cover for the biggest predators. People like Charlie Rose are different. They're not normal people. The most successful journalists only ever serve one function: to keep us confused just enough that we never look at the people actually pulling the strings. Which might explain why Charlie, and so many other serious journalists, had such a close relationship with Jeffery Epstein. Because in media, protecting evil men is a highly valued skill. We know Rose called Epstein dozens of times to party in Paris and New York City. Epstein referred young women to work for Charlie, including one he pitched as the perfect assistant, specifically because she had worked for Harvey Weinstein. Another woman appears on flight logs on a trip to Africa with Bill Clinton and Epstein. She eventually went on to work for the Clinton Foundation. Rose actually hired 3 of the women Epstein sent to him. When the reporter who broke this story finally tracked one of them down, she was shocked to learn Epstein had recommended her. She felt like she was being offered up for abuse. She even said that it felt like the staff treated her differently, like they knew she was only there to be one of Charlie's victims. And it's known that the staff knew about this for 3 decades. And some of the lower staff would have preferred to work for someone who wasn't putting them in that situation. But not Charlie. He loved that they were stuck. He knew they were enabling him, and was well aware that meant he could operate above the law. It's just another unaccountable relationship, the kind predators like him build their entire lives around. Charlie knew exactly what Epstein meant when he said that she had worked for Harvey Weinstein. And it's the same thing with Bill Clinton. I don't think it's a coincidence that this woman takes a private flight with them and immediately ends up with a job at his foundation. And if you somehow think that Bill Clinton and Charlie Rose have paid the price for their behavior, I mean, that's insane. Here's a video of this decrepit, blurry mummy from a few months ago talking about Epstein like he had no connection to him, as if he wasn't one of the people Epstein provided young women to. He's just right back to pretending he's an objective journalist. And even though it's safer for all of us that he now broadcasts from a little black box on the moon, it's scary that people are still listening. And we're going to get to this guy. But if you've been following this story, you probably already know who he is. So first, let's expose a different Epstein associate, who so far has gotten away without public scrutiny. This reporter wrote the first profile on Jeffery Epstein, which included the famous Trump terrific guy quote. His name is Landon Thomas Jr., and for years, the New York Times treated him as their Epstein expert. In 2005, he even interviewed Epstein about the importance of executive assistants. And on the surface, that might look like standard reporting, but Landon did a lot more. In 2019, he was fired by the Times for personally soliciting a $30,000 donation from Epstein. And the Times never went public with this incident. They never warned their readers that their Epstein expert had literally been in Epstein's pocket. And this is not an exaggeration. Thomas and Epstein emailed constantly. In one email about Trump, Landon tells him, "It's getting scary, the stories you could tell." And Epstein replies with, "Wow." Thomas warned Epstein that everyone kept coming to him because they thought he had the juicy info on Epstein and Trump. But he clearly didn't want him to worry. He reassures him that he told a reporter that Epstein was a great guy, smiley face. That's when Epstein famously offered to send Landon photos of Trump with girls in bikinis in his kitchen, to which Landon responded by saying he is a serious man and will help the story get out, which of course never happened. He told Epstein how Trump retweeted one of his articles and that his wife was probably going to change the locks that night. He's trying to perform the concerned moral husband routine to the guy who allegedly procured underage girls for Donald Trump. And whenever Epstein wanted help on how to distort the public about his disgusting crimes, Landon was one of the guys he'd reach out to. He once emailed him about how the allegations against Dershowitz and Prince Andrew were a fantasy and delusion, to which he responds, "Let's have a chat. You do need to fight back somehow. Present evidence that she is lying, and show the world that you are no longer that guy." My sense is that this is a TV type thing, where you can just talk honestly about this, present evidence that it's not true, and focus on what you have been doing for 5 years. And this is where I was about to joke that it sounds like he wants him to go on Charlie Rose, but that is literally, that is what Landon Thomas wrote here. And wouldn't you know that Michael Wolff also thought it would be a good idea for Epstein to go on Charlie Rose. And the last email we'll go over with Thomas is him asking Epstein if he's still in contact with Michael Wolff, to which Epstein responds with yes. It's really something that the most evil enablers always seem to have a spidey sense for one another. And this guy knew 2 years ago that he should just completely go away. After being on Twitter and Substack for the majority of his career, he just vanished. And of course, he's still the most morally justified person in his own little story. Like Landon loved to complain and grandstand about Trump to Epstein, while at the same time he's playing middleman for Epstein and SoftBank, trying to help Epstein reestablish himself in the financial world. And he wasn't just helping Epstein in this shadowy world of financial investments. He was directly responsible for distorting public opinion on Epstein's crimes. In 2008, when Epstein was finally going to jail for soliciting underage prostitution, Landon and the New York Times were ready to spin Epstein's depravity into propaganda. Over the weekend, Mr. Epstein quit his pleasure dome with its staff of 70 in his flamingo-stocked lagoon and flew to Florida. On Monday morning, he turned himself in and began serving 18 months for soliciting prostitution. "I respect the legal process," Mr. Epstein said, calling from his island. "I will abide by this." He then briefly goes on to talk about Epstein's fall from grace, which he tags in the exact same paragraph with how apparently Epstein pays for college educations for people in Rwanda, and he spent millions developing music that can cure depression. And this is a classic of all of these enablers, right? He calls Epstein's victims paid women, some of them underage. And Landon knows that that subtle type of manipulation is as far as he's allowed to go in justifying Epstein's behavior. So he launders his true opinions through another useful idiot. He digs up some credentialed expert to frame these crimes as a psychological condition. People from all walks of life break the law, of course, but for the rich, wrapped in a cocoon of immense comfort, it can be easy to yield to temptation, experts say. A sense of entitlement sets in. They feel like they deserve anything they want. I can have anything I want, and I can't afford it. And I hope that you can see through this little PR magic trick. They bring in some empty suit who uses their fake authority to spin abuse into normal human temptation. And suddenly, Landon isn't the one defending a predator. He's just the objective reporter talking about the science of extreme wealth. His defenders counter that he has been unjustly persecuted because of his wealth and lofty connections. Does that make sense to you? That someone gets persecuted because of their wealth and connections? And also, the suggestion that prosecutors were treating Mr. Epstein like just another sex offender is propaganda on multiple levels. For one, Landon is suggesting that they unfairly flattened him and ignored the nuances of this brilliant man. But prosecutors did not treat him like just another sex predator. We're all well aware that that Palm Beach case accumulated into a sweetheart deal that included immunity for Epstein and all of his associates for future crimes. And then on top of all of that, even if you're not Epstein, prosecutors are not exactly vigilant when it comes to prosecuting sex offenders. So I guess you gotta give Landon some credit for really layering the bootlicker propaganda with that one. And then once again, this mischaracterization of his victims. The legal drama began in 2005 when a young woman who gave Mr. Epstein a massage at his mansion told the police about the encounter. She was 14 at the time. And then he ends the article doing straight up PR for Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein admits that his behavior was inappropriate. "I am not blameless," he said. He said he has taken steps to make sure that this type of thing never happens again. For starters, Epstein has hired a full-time male masseuse, a former UFC champion fighter. He's also organized what he calls a board of directors of friends to counsel him on his behavior. So there it is. This is the story you would have been given if you were uncritically reading the New York Times in 2008. And I won't go over Michael Wolff's emails because he's probably the best known of these Jeffrey Epstein enablers. But what really interests me about Michael Wolff is how he's just allowed to continue acting like he's a journalist. Nothing has happened to this guy. If anything, his connection to Epstein has raised his prominence. Even quote-unquote new media outlets like the Daily Beast are promoting Wolff like as if he's anything other than a criminal enabler. That video that Charlie Rose did with Michael Wolff, and this is without exaggeration, it is literally the most popular video that Charlie Rose has posted in over 9 years. And the reason why this still gets play is because while the propaganda model is clearer to us than ever before, it's still here. It's still operating. And Epstein proves that everyone is guilty. These are just the guys with a paper trail. Like, I've failed if you leave this thinking that these were just a couple bad apples. That's not the case. The entire journalistic model is a propaganda machine that stifles the truth and promotes these delusional ways of thinking that are always to the benefit of the most evil people in the world. That's why Landon gets to walk away quietly in 2019 and isn't subpoenaed right now. And it's why Wolff is still on the news, including talking with Charlie Rose, a known Jeffery Epstein associate and fellow predator. And somehow, this delusional world that they're able to spin makes it so that a lot of people still don't see that this is nothing but pure spectacle. These people will never let you see the entire story, because for that to happen, they'd have to break the frame that allows them to pretend that they're serious journalists. All of a sudden, the elites would have no one to sanitize the violence that they impose on us. And honestly, I don't think anything meaningful is going to change. I mean, it doesn't even seem like we're going to be able to stop paying attention to these people. The system just isn't set up that way. But at the very least, we can start becoming much, much more critical of them. And one thing that I keep taking away from my research is when you think someone's bad, they're so much worse than you could even imagine.